Hey everyone, it's Jen Kramer. I've been working in the no-code world for 20 years now. I was part of that first wave back with Dreamweaver and FrontPage, went on to work in content management systems like Joomla and WordPress, HTML, CSS, and now here I am in the third wave of no-code technologies. And all this time I've been teaching people how to build websites and applications. And I am interested to watch this new no-code world evolve because you're making many of the same mistakes that I've seen made over the last 20 years. And those mistakes start with this. What technology am I going to use? This is all over my Twitter feed. I want to build a website. Should I use Webflow, Squarespace, or Card? No context whatsoever about that website. We just want to know which technology are we going to use. Same kinds of questions that we get for the apps. Or you see this type of energy. Wow, did you guys see the greatest set of updates that just came out from that company? Or did you see that brand new product that just landed? Squirrel, I need to go and take a look at that particular thing. Or I also see these people who are brand new to this field, who have never worked with a no-code tool before, never worked in software development, but they have a really great idea for an application or a website, and they just have absolutely no place and no idea where to start. So what is it that I tell people like this when they have no clear place to start? What do I do? My one piece of advice has remained the same for 20 years, which is to start with requirements, not with technology. So the requirements will drive your technology choices. Your content, the message that you want to send, all of that will drive your technology choices. You don't start building a house by trying to decide what hammer and screwdriver and so forth you're going to use to build it. You start with a set of plans, and nothing it changes at all when you go to software. You need to have a list of requirements to start. So it's always good to start with an analogy on this type of thing. And I'm going to start with my honey. This is Kevin. Kevin is a construction and a maintenance guy, and he has more tools than anyone I have ever met in my entire life. And he's always got his tools around. So when I asked him if he would be part of my presentation, and I told him I wanted to talk about screwdrivers, he just happened to have a few screwdrivers in the room where we were standing. And those were the ones right here. And I started to talk to him about his screwdrivers. So as he's working in the world of repair, he's the guy who comes to your apartment when you call and something is broken. How do you go about making choices in tools? And so what he told me was this 11-in-1 screwdriver, that's what he uses about 70% of the time. It's got that switchable little tip on the end of the screwdriver. He can switch it into anything he needs. And for the most part, this one, it will do most of the things that he needs to do in his job. But if you're looking for convenience, he has a Leatherman that fits on his tool belt and is always with him. It's a really awful screwdriver, but it's always with him. And so there's a big advantage to that. He doesn't have to think about it. People can stop him in the hallway when he doesn't have any tools in his hand, and he can still do repairs. He also has some very specialized types of screwdrivers and tips that are useful for fixing very specific types of repairs. So washers and dryers, or dishwashers need something that's very different than, say, screwing in something into a wall somewhere. So which screwdriver is the best? If you ask Kevin for a screwdriver, what kinds of questions is he going to answer for you? He's going to ask you this whole long list of things. And that is, they're all very, very important questions. And they get to the heart of the real problem that we're looking at here, which is, what problem is it that you're trying to solve? Is it a lot of screws? Is it a few screws? Is it Phillips head, or are they a standard type of screw? And that is going to drive which particular screwdriver you wind up choosing to solve this problem. And honestly, technology really isn't any different than this. So you're going to start with the requirements. What are the requirements? And that means you're going to have to do some planning. Don't worry, I got you on this. You're going to realize that some technologies are going to offer solutions over others, but you're not really going to know what you need until you have those requirements in place. So don't start with, should I be using Webflow or should I be using Bubble? Start instead with, what exactly is it that I'm trying to do? So I have put together for you a series of 5 worksheets that are here at bit.ly/nocodeconf 2021. You can download these. These are on Notion, so you can copy this particular workspace into your own and type directly inside of here to answer these kinds of questions. And we'll start here with the best place for having an idea, which is the shower, as we all know. If you're in the shower one morning and you come up with an amazing idea of this very cool thing that you want to build, what do you do next? Well, I know a lot of you go right to Twitter and you start talking about which technology you're going to use, or you quick go download some software and you start clicking around frantically and you're trying to put this thing together. But the truth of the matter is, you need to stop for a minute and record exactly what it is that you were thinking of first. So in worksheet number 1 that you're going to work through, this is your shower moment worksheet. What exactly is the problem that you're going to try to solve here? I want you to go through and think about that problem as best you can and start writing. And there are 4 questions that are on that worksheet with space for you to answer them. And what they are going to do is set a timer for 20 minutes. I don't want you to spend any more than 20 minutes on this because otherwise you are analyzing your answers, and that is the next step. So just quick scribble down exactly what your idea is. Thinking about that problem that you're trying to solve, describe it as best you can with as much detail as you can. What is it that you want to get out of this process? Is it to make money? Is it to make the world a better place? Is it to help out your particular community organization or something else that you have going on? How is your idea a little bit different or new? Because there's a lot of solutions out there. Your idea has its own particular merits, and I want you to think about what makes your particular solution unique. And write down or draw just real quick little paper sketches and what this particular app or website might wind up looking like. What are the screens that are involved? How is your data going to flow? How does this fit together? And I want you to think about it. Don't overthink it. It came to you in the shower. Just scribble it all down on paper. Sometimes that's enough to make you realize that it wasn't really all that great an idea in the first place. And in other cases, this is going to make you really excited because you start to see, oh, I actually do have a really good idea. So that's what happens in worksheet number 1. And when you're done with that, put your pencils down and it's time to analyze. Let's go through now that quick shower idea and break it into more detail. So in worksheet number 2, we're going to start with our goals and our audience. So the goals and audience worksheet is particularly long. When I teach this in college and university settings, this takes as long as 3 weeks of a 15-week semester to get this part right. But very, very briefly here, this boils down to these 3 particular questions. What exactly is the problem that you're trying to solve? Why is a website or an app the right way to solve it? And that's a really great question, by the way. So back in the day, I built a website for a master gardener. The man spent his day outside, working in gardens, setting stones, doing all kinds of work. He was never in front of a computer. And his website was not successful because he would rather be getting phone calls on his cell phone while he was out working in someone's garden than he was getting leads on his website by email that he had to make an extra special effort to go and look into. So what I would suggest here is you need to think about solutions that are going to work for the target audience. And it's not just, I need a website because everybody else has a website. You have to think about, why is this website or application the best way to solve it? Truly, that master gardener, all he really needed was a one-page website that had my phone number that said, call me. And if you weren't willing to call him, he really didn't want you as a customer. And that's okay too. And then finally, get very, very specific about who will use this product, as specific as possible. Where do they live? What are they thinking about? What kind of technology do they have? What kind of connection to the internet do they have? What exactly are they? Where are they in the world when this particular problem happens? What technology is at hand to address that particular problem? And so once you get through those particular questions and you do them adequately, you'll wind up being able to boil this down to a single sentence. This comes from Tara Reid from Apps Without Code, and I learned this formula from her at the last No Code Conf. And as it says here, fill in the name of your application or website is going to make it easy for that particular target audience that you have identified to do the thing, whatever it is that the product does, so that whatever the benefit of your product is. This is the goal of that whole worksheet, to try to boil it down to this one particular sentence. Go run that sentence by your family and friends, see if other people get excited by it as well. Once you finish worksheet number 2, we're going to move on to worksheet number 3. And here we're going to talk about brand, but not brand like you're thinking of. Brand like you're thinking of logos, you're thinking of colors, you're thinking of typography. But here, what we really want to talk about are values, and we want to talk about tone and voice. So we want you to be sure to have your values up front, think about them, think about how you're going to communicate those values, showing, not necessarily telling about those particular values. Remember that many customers like to align their values with other companies that share those values. For example, back in the day, people used to look at web hosting, the place where websites would live. And if they were environmentally conscious people, they would look for web hosts that had an environmental bent to them, as opposed to just any particular web host. So you want to think about what kind of values you're going to reflect, because that will attract certain kinds of customers. So let's give you an example of this. In the case of Webflow, they have certain core behaviors that are on their website. And if you read through their list here, one of the things that we'll come across is that being a trustworthy provider is something that's really, really important to Webflow. So how is Webflow going to write the copy on their website, all of the text that is there? How do they tell their story with trust being something that they're trying to convey every step of the way as they talk about their particular product? And one of the ways to do that is what's called a voice and tone table. And that looks like this. It's in your worksheet. And it's a set of 3 to 5 of these types of voice and tone. So things like, I want to be trustworthy, or I want to be fun, or I want to be serious, or whatever it is that you are trying to convey. You're going to write a series of sentences, like you want it to sound like this, say something trustworthy, or not like this other thing that doesn't sound very trustworthy, or kind of sketchy. There are a lot of sketchy things out there on the internet. And then describe why. Why is it so important for Webflow to be a trusted provider? You might think about the opposite. So if we were thinking about the opposite of Webflow's values, maybe Facebook comes to mind, given what's been in the headlines in recent months. Facebook always feels like they're holding something back and they aren't being completely honest with us. So that would be an example of how you could think about your particular brand in terms of values. Once you're done with that, worksheets number 4 and 5, you're going to work on kind of simultaneously. So now that you have this idea that's coming together in terms of your goals, your target audience, and your brand, now we're going to start to actually make this all tangible. So we're going to start by drawing a bunch of screens. And I would prefer that you use pencil and paper to do this, although a lot of people will want to use something like Figma, or they'll want to use Adobe XD. Personally, I think those make your designs a little bit too pretty, first of all. Second of all, it takes too much time, especially if you're using the software for the first time. It's much, much better if you are drawing these things with pencil and paper. Just erase something or scratch it out. And it puts the focus on what you're really trying to communicate here, which is what are the important screens in your particular website or app? And then how is the data going to flow in between them? So where does your user start? What do they have to do next? What happens if they make a mistake? What kind of error messages are they going to see if they make a mistake along the way? Making it pretty is not the important part at this point. And don't worry about the details about how this will be built. So don't be thinking about various types of software that will build this particular application, because part of the reason that you're drawing this out on paper is to generate that list of requirements that you can then take shopping. So just forget about all of the features and functionality and all of the software packages that you've seen. Conceptualize this the best way that you know how, and don't worry so much about how exactly you're going to build it, because you'll figure that part out as you go forward. Once you've got this series of drawings in place, you're going to move on to worksheet number 5. And like I said, you're going to flip back and forth between these, and as you start to make a list of the requirements that are in place. So you're going to look at those drawings and you're going to create some requirements from them. You need to think about your expertise level of no code. So if you are a father and you have a 6-year-old child who wants to build a birdhouse, you don't start them off on a circular saw. You're going to start them off probably with a tiny hammer and a little nail, and you're going to work on doing that. Likewise, you do not want to start off with the most powerful piece of software that's out there to start building your particular idea. You want to start with a tool that's probably a little bit easier to use and has a good recommendation from the no-code community as a good place to start. Later, you can move up into more complicated tools if your particular idea happens to go somewhere. What are your users going to need to do in an absolute minimum? This is called the minimum viable product, MVP. And what are they going to need to do at a minimum in order to make your product look interesting, engaging, and useful? So not everything needs to be there all at once, but there are some things that if it can't do these particular items, there's just no point in using your particular piece of software. So that is something that I'd like you to think about, really prioritizing what is absolutely the most critical things to include for this particular product. You'll flip back and forth because you'll start to put in some requirements, and then you'll think, oh, but if I change this around on the worksheet, or if I change my drawing in this particular way, or you have an idea for another feature on your worksheet, and that's going to feed into another item to add to your list of requirements. There is absolutely nothing wrong, by the way, with going back to the previous 3 worksheets either. As you develop your idea, you may actually want to go back and refine your goals and your target audience and hone these things a little bit further. So don't think of this as strictly a linear process. You're going to want to go round and round with this several times and test this out to make sure that you have the best first pass at your particular product possible. Once you have that long list of requirements, you are going to want to categorize these. These are going to be deal breakers. They are going to be nice to have, or they are going to be in a perfect world. So if this was a car, for example, you were going car shopping, you might think about these things in the following way. You want to be sure that you have a car that's safe. That's the most important thing to you about this car. So you want to be sure that it offers things like anti-lock brakes, or it has airbags, or it has those lane changing functionality, the little sound that goes off when you try to change a lane and there's a car over there in the other lane. Those kinds of things are really important to you. If the car doesn't have those features, you are not interested in it. You're going to look at something else. Nice to have might be, hey, if it also has a leather steering wheel on it, I'm really into that kind of thing. Or if it gets great gas mileage, or what are the other things that might be nice to have that would make you choose one car over another. But if it doesn't have that particular feature, that is not going to be the end of the world. And then finally, in a perfect world. So in a perfect world, if it also came in baby blue, that is totally my car. But obviously the color of the car doesn't really matter all that much. And if it doesn't come in baby blue, it's not the end of the world. You'll be perfectly happy with a white car instead. So that's the way you want to think about these 3 particular types of categorizations for your requirements for your website or your app. This is going to help you easily sort out exactly which pieces of software are not a fit for you at all and hone you in on what is worth an in-depth look at. You want to try to identify, say, 2 to 3 pieces of software that might be pretty good, got all your deal breakers covered, as many of those nice to haves as you can. And if you can load up on the imperfect worlds, then you are in really, really great shape. So last of all, your worksheets are done. You've done that first pass through. You've worked through everything. You think you have a brilliant idea. It's all down here on paper. Now, what are you going to do? I would encourage you to celebrate. You have a really great start to your product. So you have this wonderful plan that is ready to start executing on it. And you even have an idea of what software you're going to use to start building it, which is great. When my students would do this at the end of a 15-week semester, they were really excited and ready to start building their particular product. But what I would encourage you to do at this point is to start sharing that particular plan with as many people as you possibly can. Now, ideally, those people are from your target audience. Ideally, those people are the ones who will actually, you want or think, who are actually going to use that particular product. You want them to give you as much feedback as possible. But the truth of the matter is, anyone is better than no one. So show it to all of the people that are out there on Twitter. Show it to people in your boot camp. Show it to people who you happen to work with and get their feedback on it, because they will bring up things that have never occurred to you. And it may be that you listen to their ideas politely and then discount them. That's completely a legitimate outcome. Or you may want to go back and rethink that particular idea and somehow incorporate it into your plan. So continue to revise. Remember that no plan ever survives implementation. There will always be changes. You may think you have the perfect plan, and now all you have to do is get into that piece of software and start clicking buttons. Well, I'm here to tell you the no-code world is brand new, and they are putting out new versions all the time. So there is always things that are changing around you. And the piece of software that you thought was perfect today, there may be something new out there tomorrow. That's that whole squirrel phenomenon I mentioned. Those could be really good distractions. It may be that that would actually be a better tool for you to look at. They may also be just that, a simple distraction that's trying to get you off course. And I would encourage you not to pay any attention to those particular pieces of software. So don't get distracted by every new release that's out there. If you have a solution that feels good, seems like it's going to work with what you've specified, don't get distracted by the things that are being released after you've made your decision. Try to just get in there and start building. And then finally, of course, you're ready to start building a minimum viable product and then test it out there in the wild for viability. Is this actually going to work for you going forward? So that is those 5 worksheets that I would like for you to work on. Once again, that URL where you can download those worksheets and work on them, make as many copies as you want via Notion. That's at bit.ly/NoCodeConf 2021. I'm Jen Kramer. Thank you so much for listening.